Has President Trump fallen victim to a major misunderstanding regarding Vladimir Putin? This is not just my question. It's something the whole world is asking. So recently, President Trump, who has considered Putin the greatest man in the world and has even praised him multiple times, suddenly became so angry with him that he threatened Russia and all the countries still trading with Russia, saying, "Very soon, I will impose such sanctions on you that you couldn't have imagined even in your dreams."
And one of the reasons that you're here today is to hear that we are very unhappy, I am, with Russia. But we'll discuss that maybe a different day. But we're very, very unhappy with them, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means.
So let's discuss everything simply about this threat and why President Trump thinks Putin insulted him. So recently, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte came to the U.S., and this meeting was observed by the whole world, especially by the BRICS nations, because they know something big might happen very soon. Basically, in this meeting, the story again revolves around Ukraine, how to give more help to Ukraine, which I guess MAGA people hate to hear about. But President Trump now has a different opinion on that. In the meeting, President Trump announced that the U.S. will authorize 17 Patriot missile batteries to Ukraine through NATO channels. This is a massive increase. So far, only 2 Patriot systems have been given since the war began. And trust me, Russia will be very annoyed right now. But again, it can't directly do anything against the U.S. However, one thing no one can ignore is Russia can help Iran with nukes. Again, this is just a possibility from my side, but there are real chances that Russia could do some dirty work, which can change the world's geopolitical situation. Now, President Trump also threatened 100% tariffs on countries doing business with Russia if Putin doesn't agree to a ceasefire within 50 days, which, I guess, is a very bold move against Russia and its trading partners. But this move also traps European nations, which are U.S. allies. But behind this sudden flip-flop, President Trump has some personal issues with Vladimir Putin. Well, as you guys know, for nearly a decade, President Trump and Putin shared a mutually beneficial relationship. President Trump publicly praised Putin as a strong leader and often blamed NATO, Europe, and even Ukraine for the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe. In fact, President Trump has repeatedly claimed that if he were president, he could end the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours, not through force, but through negotiation based on his personal rapport with Putin. He downplayed Russia's role in starting the war and even threatened to stop helping Ukraine militarily. Many within NATO and the U.S. intelligence community viewed this with concern. But at the end, when reality hits, it hits hard. Vladimir Putin, from no angle, is listening to President Trump. Putin is executing his own plans in Ukraine and on his own terms. President Trump believed he can negotiate directly with Putin and bring about peace. He sent an emissary, Steve Witkoff, to talk with Russian officials. He made personal calls to Putin, offering ceasefire proposals. He even envisioned a grand summit where he could announce peace, essentially casting himself as a global peacemaker. But none of it worked. Every time President Trump spoke to Putin and urged him to stop the war, Russia would launch fresh attacks on Ukrainian cities. President Trump began to feel that Putin was mocking him, making him look weak. One U.S. senior official even said, "Putin has overplayed his hand. The president feels humiliated." So this is all bad for the U.S. image, especially for President Trump's image. He is the one who always unconditionally praised Vladimir Putin. Remember when Zelensky visited the White House? How horrible that meeting went. President Trump literally made fun of Zelensky in front of the whole world. He even said Zelensky started a war he could never win. And now he's the one supplying weapons to Ukraine. The U.S. is literally also planning to send long-range weapons to Ukraine, which could target deep inside Russia, including cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kazan, and many others. Now, another reason why President Trump is so mad at Russia right now is because of rare earth minerals. Russia has seized Ukraine's land full of lithium-ion deposits, which the U.S. always wanted for a long time. After so many embarrassments and awkward situations, an understanding was developed that Ukraine would give lithium access to the USA. But now I guess all that becomes irrelevant, because Russians have reached their first, and trust me, they are not leaving. Now the main question, this 100% tariff threat that President Trump has given to Russia and BRICS nations, will this really come into effect for a long time? Well, to be honest, I think Trump will again chicken out on this matter, and there are several reasons for it. First, Russia-US trade is literally peanuts. This tariff wouldn't affect Russia much. It's almost like a full attack with zero damage. Now, the second thing is the 100% tariffs are said to be put on countries that are buying Russian oil and gas. And guess what? India, China, and Europe are major buyers of Russian oil and gas. And we all know President Trump cannot afford to put tariffs on these nations for a long time. He might impose tariffs in aggression, but trust me, he will drop those tariffs or reduce them significantly. You guys can imagine, President Trump is pushing for 100% tariffs on key trading partners while simultaneously expecting them to sign trade deals with the U.S. That's not just contradictory, it's counterproductive. Trade with China isn't optional for the U.S., it's a strategic necessity. India plays a vital role in supplying essential medicines to millions of Americans. In Europe, it remains one of the U.S.'s closest allies, at least for now. Punishing the very partners the U.S. depends on, economically and diplomatically, isn't tough leadership. It's reckless policy. You can't demand strong trade deals while undermining trust and cooperation. Tariffs used this way aren't a show of strength. They're a signal of uncertainty. So right now, I guess President Trump is not understanding the effect of his decisions. He may realize it soon and get stuck in another embarrassing situation. Also, geopolitically, this could push China and India to align on some common issues, which only benefits Russia. This would be a self-goal for the U.S. Some U.S. senators, like Lindsey Graham, are calling for bone-crushing tariffs, up to 500%, on countries that trade with Russia. But let's be real, that kind of policy isn't just extreme, it's senseless. Blanket tariffs at that scale won't isolate Russia, they'll isolate the United States. It risks alienating allies, destabilizing global markets, and ultimately hurting American consumers and businesses. This kind of overreach doesn't bring leverage, it brings blowback. Now, the funny thing about this is, Europe is fully supporting the U.S. plan to sanction and put heavy tariffs on countries trading with Russia. But they forget that they themselves are still buying Russian gas, especially LNG. Here's a chart showing Europe buys 17% LNG from Russia, and this is very shocking considering the war has entered its third consecutive year. This is how Europe is playing. Now how Trump supporters will react to this is very interesting to see. Already MAGA people are turning against President Trump due to the Epstein client list issue. They're not ready to believe that the Epstein client list never existed, and are protesting that the Trump administration is also covering up the Jeffrey Epstein issue. And now the Ukraine issue has arrived again. So this is seriously bad for President Trump, that his own MAGA base is not happy with him, and he knows it very well. So, to make things a little better, he doesn't send weapons directly from the U.S. He routes them through NATO. Simply put, the systems will be funded by NATO, not directly by the U.S.
Just so you know, they're paying for everything. We're not paying anymore. We have an ocean separating us. I said, we have a problem. We make the best stuff, but we can't keep doing this. And Biden should have done this years ago. He should have done it from the beginning, but he didn't. He didn't know he was there.
Now, this is great, but let's see how much time this all takes. 50 days are given, but I guess it will take several months. And as always, President Trump is the king of flip-flops. Don't be surprised if he again starts praising Vladimir Putin, because President Trump didn't announce any long-term commitment or spending bills for Ukraine. Neither has he committed to sending more weapons after this. And whether these weapons will actually go to Ukraine is still hard to say. If Putin flatters President Trump tomorrow, or if domestic political calculations shift, President Trump could once again reverse course. So at the end, I guess taco is about to happen. This reinforces a harsh truth. Under President Trump, U.S. foreign policy is deeply unpredictable. It can swing based on personal feelings rather than institutional strategy. Long-term trust in American leadership is slowly eroding all over the world. In the short term, this is good news for Kyiv. Patriot batteries will save lives. It also reassures Europe, for now, that the U.S. might still be a partner in Ukraine's defense. But the long-term problem remains. President Trump is unpredictable. Whether President Trump supports or abandons Ukraine will depend not on strategy, not on democracy, not even on global stability, but on how personally insulted he feels at any given time. So, has President Trump turned against Putin? Yes, for now. Is he suddenly a champion of Ukraine or NATO? Absolutely not. This is a move driven by pride, not policy. And in geopolitics, when world leaders make decisions based on ego instead of strategy, the consequences can be unpredictable. So what do you think about this situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Hope you all have a wonderful day.